With the rise of AI technology comes a rise in new terminology, and we've reached a point where this now includes slurs. Before we talk about these emerging slurs, you should know that this particular story and moment in history is pretty unusual, and even if you're frustrated with how pervasive AI seems to be these days, using anti-AI slurs might actually be contributing to the normalization of AI and robotics in everyday life. So let's talk about why, and we'll also talk about the second wave of slurs that's rapidly rising behind the first one. Let's start with some quick but essential background to help explain why anti-AI slurs are so weird. I want to preface this video by saying that of course I don't condone the use of slurs, but we kind of need to talk about them from a historical perspective. So let's get into it. Humans use slurs and insults for a ton of different reasons. We use them to defend ourselves. We use them to try to establish kind of hierarchies of dominance. We try to establish in-groups and out-groups with them, and we also use them for humor. And honestly, some of the anti-AI slurs are actually pretty funny. I'm gonna get to those in just a second. UC Berkeley Associate Professor of Linguistics Nicole Holliday explained in an article from Rolling Stone this week that slurs are othering. Usually the things that we end up considering to be slurs or epithets are from a majority group with power against a minority group. As this article touches on, what's been pretty consistent about the use of slurs over time is that they've been applied to actual human groups. And slurs are effective because they're applied to humans who have the capacity to feel emotions, react to words, and make decisions based on what they hear. Another reason slurs work is because they create a kind of us versus them distinction, where the two sides are clearly defined. They create in-groups and out-groups. But what makes anti-AI slurs interesting is that in this case, the slurs are being applied to non-human entities, and weirdly, it might actually help solidify AI tools and robots as a new part of society. Because by coming up with these slurs, humans are acknowledging robots as a kind of group, and that group is big enough that it can now be categorized and stereotyped. Wild, right? So what are these slurs? First, let's look at what I'm calling the first wave of anti-AI slurs, the ones people are applying to AI tools and the robots themselves. One of the most popular slurs being used to describe AI tools is the term clanker. This isn't a new term by any means, but at the time of filming this video, a couple of news stories have emerged about this word and similar anti-AI slurs. We can trace the origins of this use of clanker back to about 2008, when according to etymology, who runs the popular etymology nerd social channels, when it started to get used on Star Wars subreddits. The term clanker is applied as a pejorative to talk about droids and other machines in the Star Wars universe. Using clanker instead of, say, robot implies that the thing is not of good quality, it's poorly designed, it doesn't have very good programming, or it doesn't have like very good skills, right? It's kind of like how you might call a low quality car a junker, or if there's like a sports team that has a name like the Eagles or the Hawks or something, you might refer to them as like, oh, the Birds or something like that to make it sound like it's less than, right? Here's a sitting US senator using clanker in a tweet. Sick of yelling representative into the phone 10 times just to talk to a human being? My new bill makes sure you don't have to talk to a clanker if you don't want to. And the word clanker itself has a usage history suggesting that it draws heavily on the usage of the N-word in English, with many users noting the hard R clanker ending pronunciation as opposed to the clanka pronunciation as denoting a certain level of nuance. What's more, there are other slurs emerging that seem clearly derived from other existing English slurs and insults, like wireback and cogsucker. So yes, while these and other creative words can be funny and can be ways to vent frustrations toward AI tools and robots, for the reasons we talked about earlier, these slurs might actually be moving the discussion in the wrong direction.
A computer scientist once remarked that we have machines that compute with the speed of light, but with the intelligence of the earthworm.
Applying a slur like clanker to all robots or AI tools designates them as a group, and in a sense gives them a kind of legitimacy, almost like an other community. This is especially interesting given that one of the primary reasons to use a slur is for self-defense. So when people use these terms, they're in some ways doing so as a self-protective measure, and we tolerate that because humans are perceived as the minority group. In simpler terms for this specific case, humans who feel threatened by AI and robotics technology are using slurs to try to defend themselves against machines, and in doing so, acknowledging that those machines are, in fact, a new group in society. It's kind of mind-blowing. Another thing that makes the use of slurs against AI really interesting is that AIs aren't human. They don't have the same reactions as humans, and they don't process emotions like humans. Making fun of an AI or like using a slur against it doesn't do much in terms of the AI's ability to continue doing its work. It's not gonna like go home at the end of the day and think about what you said because it's not a human being. If you've ever seen a sci-fi show like Battlestar Galactica or something like that, which also uses slurs for robots, they use the word toasters a lot in that show, for example, you might already be familiar with this concept. Using a slur in this way suggests that there's a group or a community that falls within that category. But robots and AI tools aren't human, so they aren't exactly a community, right? What these slurs might be unintentionally doing is creating a kind of us versus them mentality, but against the wrong entity. The irritating AI operator at the end of a phone line is there because someone made a decision to put it there, and someone programmed it, right?
In order to solve any problem, the computer must first be instructed by a human programmer who has painstakingly and logically analyzed the problem.
So this leads us into what I'm calling the second wave of anti-AI slurs for this video. On the back of this first wave of robot-targeted slurs is a second wave of terminology, slurs targeting the actual humans who are vocal supporters of AI. And this, I think, is a very important distinction. Supporters of AI are humans. They can be grouped because they all share a kind of preference. Humans also have the capacity to react when insulted or offended, and they can have emotional reactions when they hear a slur or an insult, right? And the emerging slurs targeting this group create an us versus them distinction that's more significant than just venting frustration against a robot you see in a shopping mall. I have to be honest too, these are also pretty creative and funny names. Here are some of the ones I've seen so far. You can pop yours in the comments too. Second-hand thinker, prompstitute, butt, clanker hugger, clanker, circuit slave, and my personal favorite, bot licker. This video is not commenting about the ethics of the words these new insults were inspired by, so don't come for me. Also, YouTube, please don't flag me for using these words because they're emerging and we need to talk about them. Although I'm not the type to address a person with words like these, in my mind, if you're gonna use insults, it's probably more effective to hurl them at an actual human and not a robot. A person has the capacity to change, but a robot is operating based on their programming, right? And I think we're going to see this second wave of slurs a lot more in the future as more and more people find ways to use AI technologies in their everyday lives. We're already seeing tons of info about everything from AI therapists to AI girlfriends to AI assistants, and the trend doesn't seem to be slowing. This wave of terminology is rising at a time when OpenAI has just released ChatGPT 5, which a Gizmodo writer noted was unable to accurately generate a list of US states with the letter R, was proven to be susceptible to manipulation by the user, and could not correctly determine how many B's there are in the word blueberry. If your coworker couldn't accurately tell you how many B's there were in the word blueberry, would you trust them with anything? I'm just asking. So it's understandable that people would want some terminology to be able to vent their frustrations against both the machines and the creators. But by raging against the machines directly, people using anti-AI slurs might be doing the makers of the machines a favor. The slurs help establish robots and AI tools as a new group which helps solidify their role in society. Slurs, in a roundabout way, help establish that a new group is present in a society, even if that group is disliked. Also, by using slurs to target the robots and technologies themselves instead of the human decision makers behind these technologies, it could mean that the robots take the brunt of the public hate. Though to be fair, leadership at AI companies do seem to have their feet to the fire, at least on a somewhat regular basis these days. Will clanker survive? Will it morph into something beyond a word used to vent frustrations about changing technologies? Only time will tell. For now, we can at least try to think carefully about what words we use, how we use them, and what we're really trying to achieve with them. Hope you enjoyed this very contemporary deep dive. Give the video a like if you did, and subscribe to the channel for more videos like this. See you next time.
The future, except in terms of trends and probabilities, is the great unknown. And the uses to which we put ourselves in relation to the marvelous machines of our own invention is perhaps the central moral and intellectual challenge of our own brief moment in time.